Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Humans and Wildlife Show. I'm Dr. Giorgia. With me, as always, is my co-host, Dr. Christian Sase. Christian, what are we going to talk about today?
Hi, Georgia. Nice to see you again. The week passes so quickly, I have to say. It's just amazing. And it's getting a little bit cooler here because we're going into early September. We do notice the difference. Anyway, today it's all about muscles, brain activity, and health. And when I thought about the subject, I thought about you, Georgia, because I know you love rock climbing. And then I thought, well, that's human beings, and what do animals actually do, and how does wildlife correlate with all this? So, Georgia, let's head it over to you.
Yeah, so it's a little bit of like I don't want to say a scattered theme, but there's room for exploration in terms of, how our activity levels have a lot to do with how we age, and humans aren't the only ones who sort of partake in these sometimes extreme levels of activity. So um, rock climbing is kind of a sport where like you can stay pretty good at it for a long time because your muscles don't degenerate very quickly. But then Christian found, and obviously exercise is good for your body and can help you live longer. But also in humans, you sometimes have like more extreme, certain
Hmm.
types of extreme athleticism that
Yes.
actually contribute to aging. And this all actually kind of relates back to animals too, because different species sort of age at different rates depending on their activity levels. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what it's about. Um, what I found was quite interesting is, and a question when I saw the article, I thought, wow, that's something. Does physical activity age wild animals? Well, you think that's a crazy question, but it's actually a brilliant question because, how much exercise is good for nature, right?
Yeah. And so, Christian, maybe this is good. You mentioned that article. Which article are you talking about? Why don't you share with us?
Yeah, yeah. So okay, we have several articles, but this is the one that it led to because I'm going to put that in here, and then maybe, yeah, maybe you can share my screen. I don't know if it's going to work.
Oh,
Hopefully
yeah.
the
Let me try.
hopefully it won't break down now. Let me just try. Okay, let me try. Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
it worked this time. Last time it didn't. So that is the article that I'm referring to, and that is a very recent one. It seems so obvious. Does physical activity age wild animals? And you think, what a crazy question that is. But it's not. It's not crazy at all because what does aging in the wild look like? I mean, we human beings are obsessed with aging. We've done so many examinations and investigations on that all the time. What is causing aging? How much exercise is good for you? What type of supplement should I take? And so on and so on and so on. Wildlife doesn't have that. And how does it actually vary between different species and so on? So I read this article and I found it interesting. And the conclusion is even more surprising. The answer is we don't know. We really don't know. So I'm just going to show you the graphics on this. So this sort of is a very simplified diagram that represents, if you look at the top, beneficial to health, right? If you don't exercise, or if wildlife doesn't exercise, if you put them in captivity, um, that may not benefit them so much, of course. And then you get
So, sorry, what's on the, I don't really understand what's on the
yeah,
x-axis
yeah.
here.
Sorry. Uh, um, as far as I understand, that's just the level of activity on the x-axis.
Oh, okay.
The
Okay.
more you do, right? You're doing more and more, and then there's an optimum somewhere, like everything in life, right, has an optimum. So you're locked in, you're doing nothing, you're doing more exercise. I know it's a little bit confusing, but that's what it means. You increase your activity, you come to an optimum balance of aging, and then it gets too stressful, and then it goes around. And there's a lot to be said about this because if you read the article, it's not that simple because we are aging at the same time, right? So you are also aging, and whilst you're aging in the wild, you can ask yourself, is aging more stressful as you grow older, right? Because you find it more difficult to respond to threats and so on. And how much experience are you using, and so on. And there's so many interesting questions here. When you read this article, you find out in the end that we only know the extreme cases, right? The extreme
Yeah.
cases where they're either locked in, or you were talking about bats, and you can happily add in,
Yeah,
bad,
yeah.
bad
So what,
activity.
yeah,
Yeah.
when I look
Hmm.
at this graph, I kind of see that, okay, if you're above that line in the middle, then it's like good, it's beneficial to you. And if you're below the line, then it's bad for you. And so like
Yes.
it looks like for the darker line, which I don't know what the different lines represent, but it looks
Yes.
like possibly, maybe it's just a range of possibilities. It's
Yes.
like, oh, like it could be where a certain amount of activity is good for you, in fact,
Hmm.
increasingly good for you, and then you get to a certain point where it's like
Correct.
not good for you anymore, where it's too much activity, you're like worn, getting literally like worn down. Or it could be like where activity is always like bad for you, like it doesn't inhibit your aging and then it decreases. So there's different like speculations, it looks like, about how activity affects your aging. I do know in the wild,
Mm-hmm.
what is the lowest activity you could get to, like hibernation. So a
Hmm.
lot of hibernating animals live longer than you think they would,
That's interesting.
because
That's interesting.
they're literally like in the cryogenic freezing like part of their
Yes.
life, right? So a lot of little tiny bats can live to be like 30 something years old,
Hmm.
34
Hmm.
years old in the wild. Even like salamanders, they hibernate, like that hibernate in the dirt when it gets cold. They can live to be, I don't know how long, but like over 15
Hmm.
years, I think, in some cases, which you wouldn't expect for a salamander, maybe even longer. I don't really know. Um, Thank you, David Dunn, for the Super Sticker Award.
Thank you, David. Thank you.
Pair character stretching his arm forward, raising his thumb up. I'll imitate anything. Um, yeah, so thanks everyone for joining in the chat. Hi, David Howden, James Bourne, Patricia Davis, Barbie Kihei, Michael Schmuck, and David Dunn. I think I
David
got
Dunn. Yes,
everyone. Yeah.
that's right.
Hi everyone. Oh, this is an interesting question from David Howden. Do animals age beyond maturity? I heard that fish, for instance, especially don't get reduced function with old age. So in biology field, we tend to think of like beyond maturity is the point at which you aren't able to produce offspring anymore. So a big question in biology is, why would anyone, any species, any individual live past the point of being able to reproduce? Because if you can't reproduce anymore, like what's the point from a biological standpoint? At that point, you're just there existing, taking up resources that potentially your children could be better off with. So you're like eating all this food that could otherwise belong to your children. You're not like helping pass on the genes of the species anymore. So from like an evolutionary standpoint, there's a question of like, why live beyond sexual like
Hmm.
reproduction ability? And humans are unique, not unique, but
Hmm.
we we live like kind of far past that oftentimes, right? So if you think of menopause or something, you live a long time past
Hmm.
menopause. Um, and one speculation for why that is like grandparents are really important for helping raise grandkids, for example, and take care of them. Like even like if you think of like in a survival standpoint, like with chimpanzees or gorillas or something, having that older generation is still helping pass on your genes successfully if you're helping take care of your kids and grandkids, even when you're not birthing more kids and grandkids. Um, but it is also true, and this is maybe what David's getting at, is that like some species, and I don't know which ones, maybe fish, some species we don't see that drop off as much. Like they just kind of keep being able to have kids their whole life, um, and then they die. And so yeah, it's interesting to think about how aging functions as like, I don't know, how long you live after being able to have kids, if that makes sense.
Well, that's a very interesting point, Georgia, and I think there's a lot of discussion to be had on
Yeah,
that, because you also touch into the thing of overpopulation, of course. Now that's You know, that's where how you know you can reverse the whole thing and say rather have people get older but with less kids right nowadays, right? Because we're also touching with resources, you know? So it's
I mean, you could go off into all kinds of
all kinds of tangents
distressing
here.
directions. Yeah, like, oh, why have anyone around if they can't have
Yes.
kids anymore? I mean, that's like weird things, weird ways you could go with that that are not cool, so to speak. But yeah, I mean, Christian, you were mentioning like on this idea of like you can overdo it when it comes to
Yes.
activity and aging. Like, so hibernation is an extreme that animals do and we can't do. Hibernation is an extreme where like they get to like
Beautiful. Yes.
live longer, right? But on the other extreme, going from low activity to high activity, are I would say humans who like
Yes.
we push ourselves a lot for competition in sports, like for fun, and we often see sort of extreme aging for those humans that push themselves. And I
Yeah.
know, Christian, you looked into this
Yeah, I
more.
was just looking at a YouTube video just an hour before the show, and I found it very interesting. Unfortunately, I can't show that for copyright reasons, right? So, so, but I'll tell you what it was about. Maybe I'll look for it. But I found it very interesting because it was it was from a sports medicine point of view. It was a doctor who gave a talk why you know what do sports and extreme sports do to us. And he brought, of course, the triathlon, and he showed a picture of a very famous triathlete, I guess that's what he talked. And my God, it was shocking because he looked as old as well. You always say as old as the hills or whatever, but really it was a shock. I said, oh my goodness, because he looks healthy, but he looks so old. And he is virtually rusted, and I mean really rusting, because in a way we are living off borrowed. We're living from oxygen, right? We need oxygen, but oxygen is at the same time destroying us because it's a bit like running a car, right? A car, and you look at the exhaust, which starts rusting because there are toxic gases that are given off because we are consuming energy. And with the humans, it's on with wildlife and with it's the same way, right? We're taking in oxygen, it's fine. The mitochondria is our powerhouse, produces ATP and gives us energy, but at the same time, um, radicals are given off. And with radicals, we mean like oxygen that have either gained one electron or lost one electron. That's what it means. And very often then people say, well, you just take antioxidants, whatever, and all these supplements. No, it doesn't work that simple. Biology is not so simple. Nothing is so simple, right? If it was just that, we just consuming these antioxidants as much as possible, and so it's actually shocking that you know these super athletes are living also they're rusting and really and virtually really rusting at an incredible rate, so I found that rather interesting. Yes.
Yeah, something sort of similar, like another sort of related example, what we talked about is how animals aging changes when they're exposed to different environmental conditions
Hmm.
as well. So I guess now we're getting more at like the middle ground of aging. Um, but for example, there is this one study that found that, you know, possums in the wild only live like a few years
Hmm.
typically. Um, but there
Okay.
was one study done by Dr. Ousted that discovered that this group of opossums living on an island
Hmm.
lived like 25 to 50% longer than the possums on the mainland. And I'm curious, I don't know if you have any guesses in the chat. Uh, Maybe it's kind of tricky, but it has to do with timing of reproduction and when you have how much energy you invest into having kids quickly. And so, what they speculate or kind of figured out was happening is that the possums that were on the island don't have as many predators. And so they can wait longer to have babies because they're less likely to die. They wait longer to have babies and they therefore live longer. So, because there's not this like pressure to hurry up and have babies, then they had, I think, actually even like more babies over time and also lived longer, but also didn't start having babies till later in life. So it's just interesting about how they like environmental pressures and predators and activity levels related to aging and longevity. Yeah.
Which is so similar to human society. I find that fascinating because if you look at the Scandinavian countries, they are always taken as the most advanced, you know, when it comes to balance of life, right, or
Mhm.
happiness or balance, and that's exactly what they would exhibit. Less children actually, and longer lives. That's very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and we so like Christian and I originally started talking about this because we were talking about like in the context of rock climbing,
Yes, of course.
which many consider an extreme sport,
No, I wouldn't.
but
No, no,
in this sense, it's
no.
not. Yeah,
Mm.
like it's well, you said it really well, Christian. You're like, oh, it's like a static sport
Hmm.
more.
It's more static sport. And there's a correlation between strong muscles and strong brain activity. That's why I thought about you,
Oh yeah.
Georgia. It's a very meticulous sport. I mean, look, I'm not the one to talk about, but I can tell you what I see. It's something where you need a lot of thought, planning, and that's why it suits you so well because you actually need a lot of intelligence to do good rock climbing. It's not only power, it's not the strongest shall get up there. It's a lot of planning, right? It's
There is a lot of mental planning that happens during it. That's
yeah,
true. And you're like
yeah.
thinking, I mean, yeah, you watch any of the good climbers and they're all
Hmm.
kind of like nerds in their own way. Like
Hmm.
they're like pretty philosophical. They're just like
Hmm.
clearly thinking about stuff. Um, yeah, but I mean, it's not like a sport where you burn yourself out. Like it's a lot of like muscle stuff that but yeah, you're not like upping your like cellular respiration or anything like largely.
Yes.
Like your muscles are working hard. I'm not like breathing hard. I'm not
Hmm.
actually even doing it for that long of a period of time. Um,
But why do you do it, Georgia? I mean, what is really driving you? That's my question. What is driving you to do this, right?
oh, this is getting very it's taking a turn I didn't expect. What is driving
Oh,
me to do
sorry.
this? Well, I
No, but
think no, no, no. That's
it's
a good. I think
it's an
it's
important
fun.
question, I find.
Yeah. Oh, I think that it is just enjoyable.
Okay, there
Like
you
it's
go.
I like that it occupies your mind and your body at the same
That's
time.
it. That's it. There you go. So
Yeah.
you're doing you're actually stimulating your brain too, right? In a very good way. That's it, right? That's
Yeah.
that's that's what I thought. That's why I thought of that article when I read it this morning. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I guess I kind of think of it as like doing Sudoku like with your body.
Hmm.
Or like you like have to figure out like the puzzle or wait,
Hmm.
this leg up and this. And so that's what I like about it. I don't know. But probably different people like different things and they're not yeah, different
Yeah,
components of it.
and why I'm asking is because I read another interesting article, and it was, of course, it was with mice again. That's what they usually do, right? Unfortunately, they do with mice. But what was interesting is they were testing how much response or how does the response to threats and other things with mice correlate to increased activity. So they took older mice and they had younger ones, and the older mice were obviously slower, right? They were obviously slower than the younger. I mean, this is just normal, right? So they thought, well, let's do an experiment. Let's put them into some forced, well, and in a good way, in a forced activity and so on, and then let's see if their brain activity will actually become better. And what they found was absolutely fascinating. The answer is yes. The older mouse were with more activity able to they were able to perform just as well as the younger ones. So they went on with the activity, over so many days, and to see how long will this go. And they found out that the number 35 was perfect. So after 35 days, they found no more increase in stimulation or activity through giving them increased exercise. And that again is so clear to me. If you do things too long, whether or too much of something, there's a maximum. You cannot produce more serotonin or whatever it is that stimulates us. So there's an optimum for everything, right? So anyway,
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I guess how do you think, Christian, that relates to other sports? I mean, you mentioned that some other ones you like age faster.
Yeah, and they say, everybody needs activity. I mean, you can, gosh, we all need activity. I think the Chinese have understood this for a long time, with Tai Chi and a lot of these. I was always fascinated the first time when I came to San Francisco. I looked in the park, I couldn't believe it. They're all doing these slow movements and so on. At first they seem absurd, but they're not at all, because they're part of a mental health and also physical health that actually takes a lot of a lot of muscular activity to be able to perform very slow movements like they do. And I actually started going to classes myself because I was so fascinated. And for me, it had a very positive effect. I learned that at the age of 21, and it influenced my whole life. So I think there are certain forms of sport that are maybe not given enough credit. They're actually very good for the mind, right? So
Yeah. I didn't know you did Tai Chi. Do you still do it?
well, here you go.
Do you still do Tai Chi or no? Oh, I suddenly can't hear you again. Oh, how weird. Yeah, your audio went out.
Am I
Um,
okay?
Now you're back, I think.
Sorry, yeah, it's this. It unplugged some. I apologize.
Oh, I
Yeah,
see.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Okay.
Um, let's see. Terry Green in the chat says using egos, for example, the first 3 months of life is extremely
Mm,
rapid growth and then it seems to level up and stabilize quickly with expenditure of minimal energy throughout life. Yeah, it's true that it takes more energy if you're literally like growing your body. Um, you have to eat more and stuff like that before your growth spurt. Um, yeah, or you have to get a little bit pudgy first, like I did. Personally.
and then there's the other story that I had, very interesting. I was sitting in a waiting room one day, and next to me, I started talking to a man, and he looked so healthy, and he was 100 years old, right? I asked him, and I was so amazed. I said, "How do you do?" That's what the question. How do you keep so healthy? What is your secret? And he said to me, "It's very simple. I was just a postman all my life. I just walked a lot. Nowadays they don't do that anymore, but that's what the postman did. He just walked his 20, 30 kilometers or 20 miles or whatever it is every day, consistently all through his life." And you hear similar stories from very remote villages where people live in a very, like what Georgia was saying, either an island situation or isolated, that they actually live a very balanced life. And it's not about extreme sports or so, but they seem to have found a very good balance. Yeah.
Yeah, I think another interesting thing that is it's good to think about age structure of a population, like what proportion of the population is, over 75 versus like 75 to 40, etc.
Hmm.
And think an interesting thing about humans is that why are we sharing that? Get that out of there.
Oh, sorry, I'm
Um,
sorry.
yeah, I think an interesting thing about humans is that we actually don't aren't living longer than we used to. Like the maximum human age limit is kind of the
Mm.
same as it has been for a long time. The average lifespan is much longer than it used to be because you're
Sorry, I
less
meant I
likely.
meant to share this
Oh,
one.
I
My
see. Yeah,
apologies.
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
the average lifespan is longer than it used to be, but the maximum lifespan is more or less the same as it has been for a long time. So,
Hmm.
like humans, our age structure of our population is changed by like advances in medicine and stuff like that over time. Not we're not unfortunately we're not like evolving to be able to live longer or anything like that. Um, oh yeah, you took the comment away just as
Oh,
I
sorry, I'll
was
put
going
it
to
back.
read
I'll
it.
put it
Put
back.
it back because
Yes, I
there's
will.
comment chaos
So,
happening right now.
mhm.
Yeah, what's David got to say? David
A,
Howden.
f- a friend of mine does ultra marathons. She ran across the USA for over about 60 days. My goodness. That
Yeah.
seems to be pushing the body to its limit. Yes. So they would be interesting to see what your comment on that is, right? Maybe, or what you think about that, right? So
Yeah, David, how old
mm,
does your friend look? Throw David under the bus here. I mean, Christian, you were saying that like some athletes, they look like 15 years older than
yes.
they actually are, and those were like extreme triathletes, you said,
Yeah, they have
right?
this incredible. It's a funny mixture of someone you can see that is extremely well trained and just looks really old. It's a when I saw that picture that I'll try and find the YouTube. I was shocked, you know, how of course there was an extreme case, but that's exactly what he was trying to say. And I
I
thought
wonder.
about, yeah, sorry, go on. Hmm?
Oh yeah, yeah. Try to find even maybe just a screenshot from the video, or if we just
I'll try,
shared
Georgia.
it
One
paused.
second.
Yeah.
I'll
Okay.
try.
David Howden says he's playing Mama on how old his friend is, but he says that she's not older looking than she doesn't look obviously older than she should. Some of that I do wonder to some degree how much some of it is like how you're spending more time in the sun as well, and you're like sweating off your sunscreen and stuff, especially
There's
like
another one.
triathlete. Yeah, you're in the water,
That's
you're
another
out there a
good
long
point.
time.
That's a
Yeah.
good point. That's another good point. Let me just find it. I hope I can. Give me a second.
Yeah. I'm
So, Georgia, tell us a bit about your
Yes.
weekend. Where did you go climbing,
Oh
if you
yeah,
want to?
where did I go climbing? Yeah, so this crazy business. I went climbing, let me get the pictures up again. I went climbing at this place called Horseshoe Canyon in Arkansas, which is just 2 hours away via car from where I am now. And it's this very interesting place that is a ranch, but it's like a ranch with horses and stuff, but they also have other activities. Like they obviously have a lot of land, and so you can pay for a climbing pass for the day, for example, and go climbing. You can also pay to do like go to the shooting range, and I'm trying to remember what other
Hmm.
activities they have, but it seemed like they had a lot of activities. So that was I have a lot of duplicate pictures in here. So that was fun. And it was definitely like well managed. Like you can see in these pictures, maybe it's easier to see in this one. You see these like metal clips hanging from the rock that you can clip the rope into. That's kind of it's unusual to go to a rock climbing area where there's just like things you can clip into hanging on the wall already. It's very like convenient and very kind of safe and stuff like that. So
By the
that was
way,
just
I just put it in the chat. It's called Oxidative Stress and Athletic Performance. Very interesting. I just put the link in absolutely Dr. David Phillips. A really fascinating talk. Wow. And he what's very nice is he doesn't only talk about sports, but he explains really what happens in the body. So if anybody's interested, there you go.
oh, cool. Interesting. Well, I think that that's about all I have on this topic. We might end, I think we might
That's
end
fine.
early today. Yeah.
That's fine. You know, we won't want to overstretch it, but yeah, I just wanted to end off maybe on the hummingbird because the hummingbird just
Oh, yeah.
fascinates me no end because I mean you have this extreme activity per a unit weight. They consume more energy than the best athletes we have in the world, and then at night they go into this torp. How's that, right?
Yeah, they're really bouncing around between the
It's just
extremes.
it's just so amazing. Nature is just so fascinating. It's just unbelievable. That's all I want to say is never forget to wake up and just look around. There's so many fascinating things. So
Yeah, I like it. Well, we will close with a special clip that unfortunately the video didn't translate very well. It makes it when I share it on the screen, it's going to be wider than it should be. But as you may or may not know, I have relatives in Italy. I'm half Italian, and my family has like land in Italy still that they had an olive orchard and olive oil like processing facility on. And my cousin, she recently went and visited, and we have bats in our olive
oh
oil
yeah.
press. Yeah,
Oh.
you look sad about it. I'm happy about it. But she shared with me a video
I'm
of
sad.
the
I think it's
bats.
wonderful. Yeah, no, it's
the the mills from Toyo.
So there's another quick video too. So that was one where you could see the bats flying around, and that thing is like literally like the. I think it's like the press for the olive oil.
Just
I'm
out of
not
curiosity,
sure.
where in Italy, you know, where in Italy this is? Where approximately?
Yeah, so I think that property is in northern Italy.
Oh, so
I'm not
northern.
actually
Okay.
sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
That one you could
Nice.
see
Very
them
nice.
hanging on
Very
the
nice.
ceiling. Yeah. So I was really excited to see that. And I kind of think that we should leave them there. I guess that they did try to get them out like last year or something. Um, I think we should leave the bats there. That's why Bacardi rum has a bat on it. Did you know?
Mm,
Because they
mm.
had bats
Oh, okay.
in the
Okay.
distillery, yeah. And the family decided to leave the bats because they were a good luck sign. And so I think we should leave the bats in our olive oil place and they can be good luck. Anyways, all right. Thanks for
Well,
joining. Yeah.
thanks for joining, and yes, we'll be back next week for
Yep.
sure. Okay.
Bye everyone.
Okay.